This was
Okay,
this is
so
based on our demonstration 2 months ago with Alan. This is the one entry we had that was stools. Go ahead,
okay,
Jake.
and I was inspired by Alan. I can't say it was from his demo 2 months ago, but I have since reviewed the demo. I couldn't make it then. So the stool on the left, I made in the class Alan taught around 2014. Ambrosia maple and walnut. And I'll call it the Alan Leland technique of, I call it glued tenons. Alan, I like Type Bond 2. You went for Type Bond 1 glue, but aesthetically, this worked out really well. Let's see, 24 inches high by 12 inches, about a 12-degree leg angle, and I finished it with clear shellac and then spray lacquer. Alan, since I took your course, I've helped a couple of your students finish their stools of the same technique, like Robert Cooper and David Coulter. I took them into the craft center and finished that. Okay,
Great.
moving to this. All right, and they worked out well. I've tried to. Robert Cooper was a member for a while. I tried to get him to display his stool, but he never would. So the second stool, I also took the class in stool turning from Jim Wallace. And so that's what I call the deco stool on the right. And if you saw my kitchen in Raleigh, I mean, it's Art Deco. We have the original Sears porcelain enamel baseboard cabinets with lots of stainless steel and matching light fixtures. So I did it to match that. It's about 14 inches wide, Honduras mahogany platter and stool and red oak. And this is finished. I'm sure I put amber shellac on the red oak. I always put amber shellac on open grain wood like red oak and ash. The top might just be shellac at this point. Later I said, gosh, looks dusty, and I'm sure I sprayed it with shellac. I sprayed it with lacquer. I made two of the stools on the right. I think this is the first one. And when I got a big learning in going to the second stool, which unfortunately I'm not showing here, is I need to be crisper on the turnings at the bottom and use ebony for the wedges, which shows more. This is what I'm doing more recently. In some ways you could say more primitive. So this is a poured river stool. So I've got deep pour epoxy with various colorations. And turned legs, and yes, Alan was the one who taught me how to turn beads and coves. So I did beads there. More recently, I've done a lot of these stools. More recently, I'm using natural wood rather than turning another set of 4 duplicate legs, which gets tiring. This is red oak with polyurethane and probably a coat of spray lacquer on the top.
Nicely done.
Yeah,
Okay.
interesting
Good job.
handle in the middle too. I just figured that out.
Yes, I've made about 8 or 9 of these stools. Some with a river edge epoxy and some with just wood. But I get obsessive about making it functional, and having the fan handle works well. Of course, people ask, "Why? How is that in the river? It's a whirlpool." I don't have a good explanation for that, but it's really handy. And Alan, I wanted to point out, looking at your demonstration from July. I mean, I learned several. I wrote down about 6 things, but the 2 things I saw different, your progression in technique. One was you were using a skew on its side, to start the beads and coves. which seemed to work well. You know, what I was using at one time, you had manufactured, and I bought those very acute V-angle scrapers. And that's what I do just to start my beads. And then I finish them with a bowl gouge. The other thing that major change, Alan, is, you know, when you taught this course like 2014, you had your very impressive jig for drilling out the holes in the legs. And now you've moved to the technique of kind of lining them up and having a long drill bit to cut through, which I like. I mean, your original technique was probably more accurate, but I don't think you need that accuracy. And this is what Jim Wallace did. That since I had wedge tenons, you know, I just get a drill bit extension and drill one hole and put the drill bit extension through that hole and drill the next one, and they line up, and that works well for the tall schools.
All right, we probably need to move on here.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Maybe move to the next slide first. There we go. I put this in here just as an example of something that happened to me. This was an open segmented bowl that I turned, it's probably 4 or 5 years ago. And as you can see, it blew up on me. The bottom red circle you see there on the left is where I initially caught my last gouge, traveling down there trying to clean it up, and I got that catch, and the resulting thing was it came out of the chuck and went spinning around on the lathe, and that upper one on the left there, I think, is where it hit the toolbar. I don't know for sure, but the result of all that mess was what you see on the right. There was a giant hole. So I set this thing aside in my shop and just kind of cogitated on it for about 5 years until a few months ago. And I decided, well, hell, let's see if we can do something. So if we go back to the other slide, that's where I'm at right now. It's not finished yet. I'm still toying around with the display and whatnot, but I figured I was going to try to take the idea of this thing blowing up and turning it into some kind of an action. So the only way I could figure to do that was to attach the loose pieces by, it's a brass, I think it's 1/8 inch, or maybe it's smaller than that, 16th inch brass, and try to put them basically back into the positions where they would have been as though they were coming apart. So more just a conversation piece than anything else. I guess the moral of this is don't throw your junk out, because you might be able to find a way to make it a conversation piece.
That actually looks pretty cool.
I love it. I think it looks incredible.
Let me make one of my traditional comments. Why don't you put a little bit of like red paint or something on some of the broken edges, as if that's where it was wounded? Sorry, that's where my mind goes, but might be cute, whatever.
I thought
It's yours, not mine. So
yeah, and good save by that, and I love the way you mounted it on that block there. I mean, as one who spends more time, more and more lately, making art pieces rather than functional pieces, it wasn't going to hold soup anyway. So no.
And you're right. I kind of toyed around. I originally just was going to set it upright on that stand, and when I did it, everything got lost. So I thought, well, let's try to make this in some kind of a fashion that might draw the eye to it a little bit better. And I kind of came up with that one, and I liked it a little bit better.
excellent choice. Excellent choice.
Hey, Bob, I think it's really terrific. And the question I have is the finish. I mean, it looks really nice. So after you picked it up more recently, did you return it to the lathe and or what's the story on that?
Well, what I did is I put it in a cold jaws and I finished the bottom because the bottom was not finished. It obviously had come out of the chuck and it was a mess. So I just put it back on the lathe and turned it slowly, and I finished the bottom down here. But the pieces themselves, this is finished with the Sealacell, but I didn't finish the pieces that were by themselves, and I kind of reasoned that it was a waste of time, number one, but two, it kind of gave it carried the theme of this is the unfinished part that's coming flying off, so it wasn't going to get finished anyway. So I don't know. I'm really looking for comments on that one.
Yeah, I like it. Nice. I think it's very clever, Bob.
I think it's great. The
Yeah.
only thing, the brass is a little bit prominent. Maybe it's just a thicker gauge than I'd like to see. It's the only thing that sticks out
Yeah.
for me.
Well, Norm, you're right, but the only problem is I tried a couple different sizes. I had 3 different sizes of solid brass rod, and the other 2, well, one for sure was just going to be limp, and it was going to start to have a curvature in it, which I didn't like, and the other one was kind of tending that way. So that's the only reason I went with that. That's an 8-inch piece of brass down at the bottom. Oh, you mean on the base or on the pieces?
The pieces.
Yeah, you're right there. Yeah, I did not have smaller than, that's a 1/16 of an inch, and I didn't have anything smaller than that.
Yeah.
And of course, I got impatient and went ahead and
Maybe something black would have been better.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Maybe a black wire instead of a brass wire. It would be less obvious and shiny.
Actually, that's something that still could be done.
Can you just put a dark patina on that brass?
Could have put a dark patina. I could use
Paint.
an acrylic paint. I could put a little gesso on it. There's a couple different ways I could approach that. But yeah, you're probably right. It's going to make the pieces stand out more than the part that's holding the pieces together.
And a follow on to my other annoying comment, beyond, blood and gore that it was wounded in battle, you might throw a little bit of cotton in certain places as if it was exploding. Okay, I apologize in advance.
Alan.
We know what movies you watched during COVID.
Yeah. All
So
right.
I want to add on one last thing, and you can take it or leave it. What I would consider with that is I would take all the broken pieces and I would assemble them together, and I'd consider just suspending that broken block just slightly away from the bowl.
Mm.
You wouldn't need as
Another
much
good one,
wire, and it would just, it'd be a different effect. Not as much chaos as you went for here, but
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, Norm.
The
That's a
direction
good
they
thought.
were exiting. That's
Yeah.
good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's I was just like they were coming off as a total block. So
Yeah.
But I
Some
gotta
assembly required.
tell you, that's not the way it came apart.
I understood.
All right. The next 4 are Ron's, so we'll
Ron's,
just
yep.
skip those.
They're real pretty, but
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about them next month. All right, Preston. You
Unmute.
there, Preston?
Yeah, I'm muted. Is this better?
Yep.
Yeah, this is a piece of cherry. And it had a void in it, and I was able to fill it with the blue resin epoxy. I think it worked out pretty good. And then here in the bottom left is a big crack filled with black Star Bond, and another one over on the right hand side too. I've got several big chunks of this wood, and I'm real happy with how it turns out.
What's the finish on that, Preston?
It's sanded to 400, sanding sealer, a friction sanding polish, I think it's called, that Terry made, and some food safe wax.
So I really like the shape and the way and the reason I asked you about the finish is because it's dark. It's for cherry. It darkened it, but it actually looks. I like the way the patina that's on it. It almost looks old, but
Yeah.
my only suggestion on this, and again, it's entirely up to you, is Norm, if you go back to that bottom, that I would soften that. It almost looks like you left the tenon on, and maybe only a wood turner would notice that. But
Okay.
I would just soften that edge, that outside edge. But to me,
It's a little blocky, just a little bit.
it's blocky there, and that's you know, but just you can take that for what it's worth. I tend to just take that down. You probably could make that half as thick.
Okay. And then round it a little bit.
And just round it so yeah, it doesn't look like a tenon. And again,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably only a turner would look at that and see a tenon, but that's what I saw. I mean, I love the bowl, I love the shape and the way the curve flows on it. But that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. I did take the dovetail off of it, but yeah, I should adjust it there. And the rings around the base of we'll call it a tenon now.
The foot.
Is where I was trying to get in there with the my sandpaper and had too many scratches that I didn't want to fuss with, so I just put those there to try to camouflage them.
Sure. No, that's good. And a lot of times when you have wood like that's that variegated or that that torn up there, you need to do something. So, but otherwise, I think it's an excellent piece, Preston. It's very nice.
Well, thank you.
Hey, Preston,
Yeah.
because you're talking about the tenons on there, so you actually did make that foot from your tenon.
Yes, I did.
So, well, you'll refine that, but way to go for doing that. That's, yeah, I know a lot of folks will, think about just cutting the tenon off as being waste, but it's, if you
I
can
wanted to give it a little
incorporate
height. Yeah, but maybe that's a little too much, like Steve mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, just get rid of the corner. There's just again, it seems like it's just stuck on
It
there.
interrupts the form just a little bit.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks, guys.
Consider it also from the viewpoint of who's going to buy it or look at it. They may not be a wood turner and they might not come to the same conclusion.
You have a picture of it right side up so we could see what it looks like.
Oh, I didn't have a
Yeah, I'll see a front view.
front on view. Yeah,
You don't have a low angle. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Next
thanks,
one.
guys. So last month or the month before, I showed some pictures of gluing these pieces up, and they did stay together. I didn't have any chip out or any loose pieces that I had to fix at all. The two that are the same piece of wood, I made the smaller one out of the cutouts from the bigger one. And then the blue one is just a couple more pieces I glued together.
Oh, those are really cool.
It really shines up nicely. I don't know what they put on the wood or what kind of dye or anything like that, if that's what makes it shine. But
Now you're going to laugh at me for saying it, but because this form has so many straight lines, the blocky foot, I think, works perfectly there.
I agree.
President, if you had just left the tenon on that and squared it up.
Is that tenon big enough? I mean, you want to?
yeah, it's actually pretty small. It's only a 3-inch or like 2 3/4 inch bowl. So that was the smallest tenon or the smallest chuck jaws I could get. And this is supposed to be a quick and dirty kind of piece. So I didn't have any intention of doing a lot of attention to the foot.
Well, it is segmented, so there you go.
Sort of.
I think it looks cool.
Yeah.
Oh, how do you make the segments?
I buy those little blocks if you look on last month's, it's about an inch and a half by 3 inches, with, 12 or 15 laminate layers in it. And it
Okay.
comes glued and covered already.
It's Spectra
And
ply.
Is it
What's the company
Spectra
name,
Ply or
Norm?
different?
Cousino,
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
they
cousin.
make rifles and knives and stuff like that.
You just.
I still got a bunch of those blanks if you want some.
Oh, yeah. I might take some more, yeah. Are all of them the brown and the red?
Yes, yeah, just that, the
Okay.
upper right color one.
Yeah. That's pretty pleasing, yep.
I like the fact that it's off center
Yes,
where they meet. It makes it unique.
it's probably gonna make it hold better too.
Yeah,
You tried to center all those corners, it probably would fall apart more easily.
yeah.
All
Well,
right.
sometimes it
That's
slips
great.
when I'm going,
Great, great.
wow, this is beautiful.
Yes.
All right, Mark.
Hey, guys, so this is sweet gum. It's, it's pretty good size. 13.5 inches across, 3.5 inches deep. This is wood that I got right from the felled tree. It's been nearly 2 years now. So this was rough turned about 15 months ago. And so sweet gum is interesting. I know I've shown some of the sweet gum before. The thing that's cool about the sweet gum is, I did the rough turning when it was soaking wet, really within days of the tree coming down, and coated it in anchor seal and put it up to season, and would notice that a week or two later the thing was just engulfed in this black bloom. Well, mostly black, but there were other colors in there. But anyway, it looked really kind of scary. But you leave it sit there for a year or so, and it really turns the sweet gum to these beautiful browns. Anyway, I enjoy turning it. I know it's, people don't think much of the tree, but the wood is, well, I think it's underrated because it's really fun to turn. So anyway, if
Beautiful
anybody gets
too.
some of it, I recommend it. So, right, going back to Preston. So Preston, that foot is turned from the tenon. That was and that was probably a 6.5 inch tenon on that when I was working on it, doing most of the turning. But you just don't have to you don't have to make a foot that's above the tenon. You can incorporate them all together. Anyway, you save wood that way and the whole thing works well. But so that's it. It's finished with walnut oil and wax. It's a simple form, which is what I like.
Could you do me a favor, Mark?
Yeah.
Could you next time turn something ugly, inelegant, and blah? 'Cause I'm getting sick and tired. Your pieces are so goddamn beautiful. It's embarrassing.
That would be
They
a
are-
challenge, actually.
Well, thank
So-
you.
Wow. That is gorgeous.
A couple comments real quick. The photography is beautiful. The proportions, your lighting, all that stuff, it just really makes it pop. The bowl is absolutely stunning work. That form is incredible.
Thank you.
They always
Um,
are.
So I wanted to comment on the photography because I did it differently than I have, and I saw everybody else going with this, softer light from one source, as I think John was talking about. So, and the way I have been doing them is dramatic, but it's sort of it's labor intensive, and so this is done with I do have some photography stuff. So this is done with just one softbox and my iPhone, and it works great. So I'm a fan.
You just got to manage the shadows. Have you tried the reflector?
I didn't think I needed it at this point.
It's
I
more
like
dramatic without, for sure.
Yeah, I like the shadows on that right side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt at all.
No, and the curve, the shape of the curve. Joe, did you have a comment? I think you
I
got
was
cut off.
I was just curious, did you say that the tenant started out at 6.5 inches?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, maybe it's a little bit smaller than that, but probably 5.5 anyway.
Oh, okay.
But the bowl is 14 across, so
That's a good sized
Yeah,
hunk on there.
it looks nicely proportioned.
It's taken me
Thank you.
years
Well-
to get away from the Chris Borner taught habit of making the smallest foot possible.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can overdo that, and then it looks a little bit wobbly. And I want my bowls to look stable. Have some grace, but still look like they won't be too tippy. So. Yep.
And your comment about sweet gum is exactly right, Mark. I mean, I've had the same experience. Sweet gum not spalted is fairly boring, but it does spalt very, very nicely if you catch it before it rots. It's so unpredictable, and yeah, you turn all that black gook off it, and it's always a surprise, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. But the key I found with sweet gum is to catch it before it actually starts to deteriorate on you, and it does do that fairly quickly.
Okay, so I don't know how you do. I didn't consider any of this wood spalted. There's been really no decay in it at all. And this was, the color only happened after I did the rough turning and set it aside to dry. So
right.
So interesting.
Yeah,
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I've never seen a color like that on sweet gum.
Beautiful
Not
color.
that much
Love it.
experience, but yeah, that's beautiful. Mine turned gray and tan.
Yeah. All right, Mark, next one.
Okay, so this is ash, and this is a false crotch. The tree was killed by the ash borer beetles, and then it did sit and spalt in my driveway for a year or two. So it's probably past its prime, but but there it was, and so I used it, and it's a nice size. It's 14 inches by 5. So it was interesting to turn. There were soft areas, hard areas, and one spot there was, I have to look back and see if there wasn't a pebble caught in there or something, because it was just like stone. So it was an interesting turn. Again, it's finished with walnut oil and wax. And it has I didn't take another picture of the bottom, but it is footless, so it has a round bottom, and it rocks nicely.
So when you're working with spalted wood, do you have to take any special precautions?
Well, I always work with a respirator on, so I don't do anything beyond that.
Joe, there was a demonstrator at the symposium, and I can't remember the woman's name. She's from the West Coast, but she's like the doctor of spalting. And what she said was, once it's dry, it's fairly inert, but she kind of, at the same time, everybody reacts differently. And there's a possibility, even if it is dry, that there are some live spores in there. So I mean, her recommendation was to wear lung protection on it. But I'm the same way. I mean, I have spalted stuff, and because you never know when there might be mold and stuff coming off it at the same time. So and one other comment on the previous we talked about the color, that sweet gum. I recall this woman saying that not all spalt, some of the spalting is just a color change, not a not that the black lines that there's all different kinds of
I see.
funguses that cause it. So I think in her vernacular, this still would have been considered spalting, but I'm certainly not the expert on it. But that's why I made that reference to it. There were some that are way more, it depends on what fungus gets into it that starts it growing. So
Right. I see.
But that's it's a topic for we could talk all night on that. But it is. I remember her comment was it's unpredictable, and you can try to force it to do certain things, but most often you're surprised with what you get. So, but no, this is another nice piece, and for a piece that was that variable, at least from that picture, it looks like it's you managed to get the end grain smooth on that. So that's nicely done.
So when you work with spalted wood, do you air out your workspace or your garage in your case, Steve?
I run I have a HEPA filter on my dust collector, and I have a powered respirator. So I run that. I run my dust collector almost all the time when I turn. I don't put the big chips in there, but I run it to get the dust out of the air. So yeah, I just do that as a matter of course because I don't like the fine dust all over my shop, but I'm more careful when I'm doing that. So, all right, Terry.
Okay, so playing around a little bit with segmenting. I did the bowl last month from the old bedboards, and I had some old red oak floorboards laying around from my dining room, and I decided to make a bowl out of those. So I made the bed bowl, and then I made the floor bowl, and I told one of my friends that, and he said, "It's a good thing you're not keeping any wood from your bathroom."
Make the toilet bowl.
That's right. So it's about 6.5 inches in diameter, and what did I say, about 4 inches tall or something like that, 4¼ inches tall.
Yeah, 4 inches is what you said. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
toilet bowl, isn't that a West Coast Conference game?
And it just has Minwax antique oil on it. I wiped it on and wiped it off.
And
Very
how
pretty. I
old?
like the lines, the wood, picking up all those little lines in the wood. That adds a lot.
Yeah, I guess that's from the medullary rays or something in the red oak. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it does look kind of cool.
Yeah, like that. Inside and out.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, you're essentially getting the all the different angles on that red oak.
Right.
That's probably the only way I would turn red oak. So 20 years old. So
Snob.
it didn't make your hands purple.
It was fun. It was fun to play with, and had got rid of some of the boards, but I still have a bunch of them left.
Had to get all the nails out. What I don't see is a lot of times.
These were the extra pieces that they didn't put into the floor, so there were no nails in there.
Okay. Yeah, because a lot of times you see the staining and stuff from the nails when people try to use floorboards. So
Yeah. So these are basically virgin floorboards, I guess.
So, Stephen, what about that foot?
I can't see the bottom. So, but no, I'm okay with that foot.
I'm just teasing. Come on.
That was not, well, I did this on a glue block, so there was no tenon to speak of. So that was
It
a
goes
solid
well. I
piece of
like
red
that.
oak in the bottom.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, nicely done, Terry.
Different
All
board.
right. Yeah. All right. Next one. Norm, did you? Oh, there we go.
Okay, so this is some spalted ambrosia maple, and I did it's twice turned, and it's kind of a ginger jar kind of style. It's about 5.5 inches tall and about 4.5 inches in diameter at the widest spot, and it has basically the same finish.
So is that turned end grain?
Yes, the bottom part is end grain. The lid was side grain.
And where was the pith? Is it in there, or is this outside? Is this the log big enough that you were able to get the pith out of it?
the pith is right in the middle. So if I showed you the bottom, you could have actually seen the pith. There's a slight little crack that I repaired right at the pith, right in the middle. So when I turned this, I basically, turned it spindle orientation, and I lined up the thing with right on the pith. So the pith was perfectly in the center at both ends.
Okay, well, you answered my question about the crack. I was just gonna ask you whether you had any cracking at the pith, but you just repaired it. Okay.
Yeah, after I turned it the first time, I actually just dripped a little thin CA glue inside and on the bottom. And, the crack did not propagate any further at that point.
So the lid is a separate, I mean,
It's from the same piece, same tree, but it was actually a side grain piece as opposed to an end grain piece. So there's no pith in the lid.
okay. All right, good.
Great.
And what did you hollow it with? You just
Well, I don't remember. I have several hollowing tools. I have Trent Bosch thing. And
Okay.
so I probably used the Trent Bosch some, and then I have some smaller hollowing tools that I use from Rockler, some carbides. And I
Right.
usually use a combination of both of those depending on the size.
okay. No, that's nicely done.
Anyone use the Easy Wood hollowing tools?
I do not have the Easy Wood hollowing tools. I have some, Rockler has some hollowing tools of their own, and I have those, not the Easy Woods.
Yeah, no,
And then
I wasn't asking specifically.
sorry.
In general, does anyone use the Easy Wood hollowing tools and what they thought of them?
I do have them. I use them periodically. I think depending on the size piece you're doing, it's probably better to do a rig setup with a stabilizer and all that. But if they're smaller pieces, I think that the Easy Woods will work.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, this kind of pales in comparison to what we've seen, but this was my first year. I used the Easy Wood jig, and
It's looking at me.
actually turned out pretty well. There's a little tear out on one side that you can't see from the photograph, and I think it's because I probably hit the tenon with the cutter, and it sort of like made a slight circular tear out pattern on one side, but I'll have to experiment with it a little more and see. But the only thing, the grain pattern was kind of interesting, so that's why I wanted to show it.
That looks like a face. Joe, you said, I think you said Easy Wood, but I think you used chefware kits based on your description, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting. It does look like an alien staring at you.
Right, said it's looking at me.
Yeah. So, well,
cool. I wish I could say I had planned it that way, but it was
Yeah.
totally accidental.
It needs a nose.
yeah,
Are we skipping over Ted's?
yeah. We skip over Ted's.
Do some carving on that next month.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, it's
So
nice.
this is ash, quarter sawn ash. And it was from a block I had gotten from my brother up in New England. It was roughly 14-inch square block, 3.5 inches thick, and I resawed it down the middle. And I had to cut off some of it on one side because there was a bit of pith in it that I cut away. This is about 12 inches in diameter. And it was a big tree. I kind of wish I'd brought more back. It was kind of fun. It was the first time I've ever turned ash, and I really liked it. And so I cut it down because I wanted, so I ended up making 2 platters. And I used a mortise on the to hold it to the chuck, and then after I got done turning it, I rounded off the inside. I just used a sandpaper on a Dremel tool to round that over. And it made a real simple design, but I really liked the way the grain ended up in this.
You said it was like 12 inches in diameter, right?
Yeah, it's the finished bowl is 12 inches in diameter. I mean, finished plates of 12 inches in diameter. It's maybe 1 3/4 inches thick.
Now, what kind of animal is that looking back at me?
What's that?
What kind of animal was that looking back at me? I see an eye and a beak or something like
It's a
that.
narwhal.
Yeah, I
beaver.
don't know what that is.
Yeah, could be. Yep.
You guys having liquid dinner or what?
It kind of looks like it might be a fish.
Whatever.
I
What
like
finish it?
your,
What-
I like
Liquid
your
dinner.
signature on the bottom. Is that
Yeah.
did you use a wood burning tool?
Yeah, what I've been doing lately is I write on the bottom with a pencil, and then I go in with the wood burning tool and darken it up, and that really makes it so it stays. I've tried lots of different methods. I'm not satisfied with anything that I do, but I did burn that in.
Wait, it looks.
That's
it looks
nice.
pretty good.
It's crisp. I like it.
Good. Yeah, Chris, right.
Yeah, I struggle sometimes. This is tough because of the open grain nature. It's a little hard to do, but it came out pretty well. Yeah.
What finish is on there, Tom?
So I use a friction polish that I make up myself. It's what is it? Amber, shellac, denatured alcohol, and boiled linseed oil in equal proportions. And I usually put 4 coats on. I can do that relatively quickly. I let it sit for a while and then do 4 more. And this is after it's been sanded up to about 400. And that's kind of my go-to finish for most of my bowls.
Looks good.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, I'm real happy with it. I've got another chunk of the ash. I'm just not sure what I'm going to do with it.
So when you have ash that's not quarter sawn, if it's flat sawn and you turn it, you end up with very broad grain. You know, depending upon the angle of your cut, you could end up with some very broad open grain areas. And I found with friction polish at times it tends to accumulate in that open grain, and because they're so big, I have found that with these with flat sawn open grain that I tend to go more with an oil finish that it doesn't build in that grain. I think it works on this one because because it's quarter sawn that you have such tight grain patterns on it.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased with the way it finished up. It's real smooth. It looks like it shouldn't be as smooth as it actually is.
Yeah, just if this was a flat sawn piece, the grain would be, as you come down the sides, it would be 3/8 to 1/2 inch wide. So yeah, just a word something to think about as you do the next one. So
yeah, well this looked like a pretty special piece of wood, so I wanted to do it justice. I was originally going to make a shallow bowl out of it, but then I thought, well, I can make 2 platters.
No, it's not often you get some quarter sawn wood like that. So
I know it was to get that much quarter sawn was something.
All right. So Jim, the inventor, every month I look forward to seeing Jim's pieces, and I'm like,
It blows us away, doesn't it?
it's like, oh my, how do you think about this stuff?
You guys blew me away tonight. you guys can do end grain to side grain. You can have the pith in the middle of the piece. I got $3,000 worth of camera equipment and all this stuff. And some people turn it, they use their cell phone and a flashlight. It can't compete. I can turn, but the rest of it, I didn't. Anyway.
Joe, if you had left the 10 on this, I would be impressed. That's all I'm gonna say.
There is a tenant. In fact, the whole thing's a tenant on the bottom.
I'm not critiquing any more pieces here.
No. Can't take teasing either. The piece on the left, in Europe, years ago, they had cloth napkins, and the royalty had these real ornate napkin holders. And some had rods in them. There were all kinds of different things, but I thought that's pretty neat. And the one on the left is called an umbrella holder, the umbrella stand, the umbrella napkin stand. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat, but I made it a little simpler. And then I went to the one on the right is a party napkin holder. And I thought, I don't want a handle on the top. There's got to be something else. So I put toothpicks in it. And it worked really neat. Go back to the other picture again. The shaft, like with the toothpicks.
Oops, sorry.
That's a 2x2 piece of wood with the main shaft is a 2x2 piece with maple in the middle. Actually, it's 1x2 with maple in the middle. I turn the top of the thing between centers and get that roughed out. And the shaft, the main shaft, by making it in 3 pieces, it's a 3/8 shaft. By making it in 3 pieces, it doesn't whip. It becomes more a piece of plywood, so you don't have end grain and stuff. So I turn that to about 5/8 in diameter and leave this big lump on the end. And that way I can stick it right down the headstock of my lathe and turn the whole cup on this thing and finish it. And then I feed it out and finish the shaft. It works beautiful. You guys did a nice job. I sent a whole bunch of pictures into them. I had no idea how you're going to put this together, but anyway.
Just glad my wife can't see this.
Jim, if you'd been around in the textile industry with me 40 years, we could have done something.
No. Anyway, I make the big one now with the toothpick holder in the top too, but I haven't got around to cloth napkins. I don't think I'll be doing that.
So when you feed that into the that shaft into the headstock, are you holding it with a pin vise, or how do you?
No, I use the small jaws with #1 jaws on a chuck, I think.
Okay.
But it works beautiful. I measured the size. I think it's just under 5/8 of an inch, but you could feed a long shaft in there. And I mean, you could make that thing 3 feet long if you wanted. Just feed it out and keep turning it.
So do you put? So the cup is out at that point. So do you just put a cone into the cup and into your tailstop? Okay.
Yeah, I have a wooden cone so it doesn't mess things up. But I actually turned. I think the next one. Well, no. There's a little white on the side of. I keep using my mouse. You guys can't see that. There's a little white on the side because it wasn't quite big enough when I got done. So I put some maple on the outside. But I think I would just make about a 1x1 shaft and continue. That would be 1x2 shaft up the middle. And then I would stick a couple blocks right at the end just to make the cup. And put it between centers and turn the whole thing round, and then stick it down the center and hollow it out and finish the cup. But
how did you so the umbrella part of it is, so that's just slid onto the shaft and glued?
Yes.
So how did you cut the slots in the for the napkins and that?
I cut them on the bandsaw.
Okay.
And then took sandpaper and worked in and out of there. Here I go with the mouse again. On the later ones, from the cup, the shaft, the small shaft, from the cup to the umbrella, that short piece of shaft I make slightly bigger so that there's a register when you put the thing on.
Oh, okay.
I mean, just a 1/16 of an inch or something. But it
Right.
registers against it, holds it square. It takes a lot of the fun out of life.
Yeah.
This disassembled for storage?
No,
Okay.
no.
I was just
No.
wondering if this whole part came out of the bottom cup, that's all.
You what?
I was wondering if the whole tree portion came out of the bottom. to
Oh,
put
no,
away.
no.
So when you to cut the slots back to that, did you index that on the lathe in order to get them, to draw lines on where to draw them, or did you? I assume you did that after it was turned around, right?
Yes. Indexing, I have a kind of a stiff piece of white paper, and I draw a big circle on it. And then I draw lines radiating from the center out.
Right.
I think this is 12. So when I set this in the center of it, I can actually tick mark the start of each cut.
Okay.
And then I take a piece of cardboard and I put it over the center of the hole, or put it to the center of the hole to the outside tick mark, and draw a line.
Okay.
Steve, you knew he was gonna have his own method of indexing.
I
The engineer was gonna have to step in there.
Lathe free. Well, I have them for all kinds of things. I do it with bowls too. I flip the bowl over and set it on there, and I can draw whatever I want, do the indexing.
Okay. All right. No, that's Jim. I mean, you may marvel at some of the other things, but I just the cleverness of what you come up with each month is just astounding to me.
Willie's
I'm-
awesome. I love it. You won't believe next month. I got one coming next month.
Okay.
It's like you woke up from a
Beautiful.
nightmare.
They're brilliant.
No, that's
No.
it's just so good, and the photography is great, Jim, and the napkins
Yeah.
actually fit so well in there. Who folds the napkins? That's what I need to know.
Yeah, my wife does that. In fact, she went out and found napkins that had some color with them and that sort of thing. And
No, that's
Kudos
marvelous.
to her too. The combination is beautiful. The photography is $3,000 worth of camera equipment, tripod, light tent, and whatever else.
And then shoot it with your iPhone.
Yeah, Galaxy has got really good resolution. Whatever.
All right, Jim. Well, as usual,
Thank you,
nicely done.
Ooh.
All right. This one is mine. This is a 14-inch piece of big leaf maple burl. It's a shallow platter. It's about 1.5 inches thick or tall. And so that's the front. It's finished. It's finished with seal and then just buffed. And that's pretty. My wife said, "Why is that color?" But it's pretty much that is the color of the burl. So and that's the back side. And I didn't have time to incorporate the profile view in the front, so there actually is a third picture, Norm, if you just want to go one more. But that's but it's just it's not a bowl. It's almost flat. It's just got a little bit of dish on the sides to it, but it just drops down into the platter. Just trying to keep it simple. It's about 3/8 of an inch thick on the sides. It gets a little deeper towards the center. So
Supermoon.
that's just-
That looks like solar sunspot photography.
Yeah.
That was my first reaction, that right there.
Yeah, well, that's the man in the moon up there on the upper right there. But
Yeah.
no, I just love working with Burl. Because you just never know what you're going to find. I mean, until you get into a piece, you just never know what you're going to come into it. So, but anyway, this came from Mike Smith out in Oregon. So,
Beautiful.
I
So,
like,
so Steve, how much of that surface do you do with the gouge, and then how much are you doing cleaning up with scrapers, or what are you doing to get a good surface without the tear out?
that piece was probably done entirely with a gouge and probably with a Ellsworth grind at the end, and just with a shear cut coming across it. You know, just I freshly sharpen it, and I seldom use scrapers. But most of the time, if I can get to it with a bowl gouge and do it with a shear cut, and with something shallow like this, it's really easy. When you get a deep bowl, it gets more difficult. But
A shear cut, like a shear scrape with the gouge? I know.
yeah, so I got the gouge sitting up at about a 45-degree angle, and I'm just cutting with the wing on
Right. Okay. Right.
on the gouge, and just taking it comes off in feather cuts. So I mean that's what I'm doing. And so
That's great. Looks like you're getting a great surface.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
okay. And
I-
okay,
Good
Norman,
photography. That black background really sets it off.
and this is a piece that I have. I named it Ripples because it reminds me of what water does. You know, when you drop a drop of water into a pond, and the ripples extend outward. This piece is a little over 2 feet tall in the stand like that. The piece of burl itself is about 22 inches by 14 inches. It's mounted on a rotating base. And Norm, if you go to the next picture. So it was turned using that technique of mounting it with wedges onto a backing board. This took every bit of the 25-inch capacity of my lathe because it was turned off center. Actually had to, the center of this was dictated by where I could get it on the lathe. So you can see on the top, I wanted it, I didn't want to move it any further. So I actually cut a little bit off what's on the top of that in order to get onto the
Why it's
lathe.
rounded, yeah, okay.
So, yeah, this is just an art piece. Actually, what I had this on Instagram and or on the wood turning site on Facebook, I think, and one of the commenters said, and so it's on a really nice Lazy Susan base. It's and so I actually have a video of just hand turning it, but the suggestion was to put it on a motorized base, and so I'm looking at some now that actually have little stepper motors in them that'll turn 90 degrees and stop for a couple seconds, and turn 90 degrees and stop for a couple seconds, and I may do that. Again, this is strictly an art piece, so but if you hang around me long enough, you get to see the there's a lot of burl in what I'm doing here, but this was just a fun piece.
It's a lovely
Can you
finish.
talk
You want to
about-
describe that too?
Pardon?
I said it's a
Alan,
lovely finish. Could you describe that too?
the front of it is finished with Krylon spray gloss, which I rarely use on burl because it's hard to get smooth. And I had to actually wet sand this a couple of times in order to smooth it out. I actually have one little run on there that I need to go back and finish. The back side is finished with that Krylon matte It's the stuff they use on charcoal drawings to stabilize it. I can't remember the name, but it's just a matte finish. Fixative. That's exactly right. It's just a matte fixer, and so it just to seal the wood a little bit. And the base is just rattle hand satin finish black, and then there's just 3 brass rods that it's held up. Actually, one of the more challenging parts on this whole thing was to get it on the stand and get those 3 brass rods lined up in the burl and in the base.
Well done. That's really great.
Yeah.
Beautiful piece, Steve.
Can you talk about your decision to have the ripple heading upward? What would this piece look like if you rotated it through 180 degrees?
Or 90.
Well, I didn't like it 90. I thought about doing it the other way, and because the top is so thin, I could not. You see how it gets real thin up there? I could not figure out how to mount it that way. So, and that's what there's some functionality there. I just couldn't. I actually thought about. At one point, I had it pointing like at 45 degrees. And it looked like it didn't look balanced. Not that it had to look balanced, but it made me uncomfortable looking at it because it looked like it was going to topple over. So I actually tried this a whole bunch of different ways before I settled on this. Even to just turning it a few degrees one way or the other, I had just had it sitting on blocks a bunch of different ways, and that upper right edge at one point I had vertical, where the pointer is right in there. I had that more vertical than at that 45, but there's no signs in there. I moved it around until I was happy with it. So,
And thankfully you resisted the urge to put a clock face in it.
yeah, I did. So that's it. Norm, did you have something to show?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually turned something this month, but I didn't want to put it in the gallery for reasons that might become obvious.
Okay.
I can escape this. It's on a Facebook. I'm going to pull it down later.
Okay.
Come on. Facebook is not cooperating.
The X.
Yeah, I've been hitting that X. Trust me. There we come.
Okay,
All right.
good.
6 minutes later, it starts clicking. I mentioned in our last meeting that I'll be teaching a class in the fall. And this is one of the pieces. And what we'll be doing, at least for part of the classes, we'll do one of these heirloom platters where we'll take the family members and etch them in. So since, this is a friend of mine's personal information, I'm not going to leave it up on Facebook. But the idea is that you turn a platter, leave a fairly wide rim. Actually, I'll leave the whole face flat, and then we'll use the laser to etch the outside.
And I gotta say, the grain pattern looks like Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear. Come on. Okay, I'm the only one that sees that. Come on.
Yeah. So is that ash, Norm, or oak?
Well, this is what supposedly it's ash, but it's got too much of a red hue to it.
Oh, this is the one you sent me and asked me.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I remember that now. It's hard to tell between ash and red oak.
It doesn't have any medular rays, though. That's the only thing.
I tell you, that looks like ash to me, but it's
Yeah.
hard to know.
It took the burn really nicely.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So Norm, and I know you and I have talked about this, but maybe for the benefit of this group, I'm surprised that when you use the laser with an open grain wood like ash, that there's not a variable burn when you get into the sapwood versus the heartwood on the rings when you get into that broad open grain. Is that a fairly consistent observation? I mean, so you go around the rim of that bowl and you have different grain orientations and in and out of those wide open grain areas? And is the burn consistent? Like you see where the 5 is there. I mean, that's in a broad area there. So your observation, I mean, based on our previous discussions, what you're telling me is that there's not a variety, that it burns very consistently regardless of the grain.
Right,
Is
it
that
all
a
depends.
true
So,
statement?
View if you can.
sorry.
If you can go back to the previous view. Okay, so if you look at the 5 and you look at the A in March.
Darker.
Slightly. So what I was going
little
to say,
bit
Stephen, is there is a variance, but this kind of lettering is so defined that you won't see it. If you remember the desert platter I did that had a big broad burn, that was on Western cedar.
Right.
That had significant variance, but I also had large areas, so it would pop out. The reality is it is varying, but I'm burning a very fine line very deeply.
Okay. So that
Yeah.
so that's considered in the selection of the burn. You know, do you take into account your wood when you are designing your burn? I guess would be my question.
I have not done a lot of it, so I'm learning every time. So here's one of the reasons. So you could, arguably, you could take this platter, as they're saying, basically completely finish it and then just go burn the rim. But I don't. I've gotten in the habit of just turning the outside and leaving the entire top portion dead flat. And then what I do is I do my test burns in the middle to find the right settings and what's going to work, what's not going to work.
Yeah.
Knowing that I'm going to turn that away later.
I wondered how you came up with the trowel pieces. Yeah. Yeah, but like
Okay.
Steve, your question, like if you're doing a bamboo cutting board from Walmart or something like that, the bamboo, the way they glue it up, there's so many different pieces of wood there. And
And a
it's
lot
not
of glue,
consistent
too.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you've got one piece here, this is real nice.
What I found is so I've used lasers in the past. This is an 80-watt machine, and what that does is it kind of blows through a lot of the variance issues. It makes it easier to use because it's so strong that you can get a lot of detail out of it without worrying too much about it. So I always do a test to make sure I'm getting. I think some woods can be smudgy. You can do some cleanup afterwards with a light sand or a burnish. But I haven't, except for that one that someone suggested I expose to ammonia. It's worked out every time. I haven't had any real failures yet. So
You
now I
burn a
will
hole-
for sure.
Do you burn the whole rim at one time, or is that like in 4 segments
No, all at once.
all at once? Beautiful.
The thing about the laser is you got to do it all at once because you cannot move that piece. You're doomed if you move it. And occasionally you'll do a burn like that, and when it's done, you go, "Oh crap! It's not really dark enough, or it's not deep enough, or a spots." So what you want to do is run it again, and you can do that. You just cannot touch the piece because there's no way you're going to align it again.
How big was the piece, Norm?
That's about 12, 13 inch.
Okay.
I had a kaleidoscope engraved, and I had 2 or 3 of them done, and the first one had like burned smudges around it. So the next couple, I give a coat, just one coat of lacquer, and they came out gorgeous.
Yep. Well, there's still seats in that class if anyone wants to play with the laser.
Yeah, I signed up. Is there any film on this when you're lasering it, or is it just naked wood?
Naked wood.
Okay.
But you do have the option of masking it, painting it before the
Yeah.
burn. It's a very interesting effect. You can paint it, burn through the paint. I mean, 80 watts will burn through just about anything. So.
And Norma, that font, the font that's around the edge, not the one that's up in the top. I find that, I mean, it's a very pleasing font for what
Yeah.
you've done. I don't know what it is, but it um it just kind of flows. I mean, I think that's aesthetically. I mean, if that had been a blockier font, I'm not sure it
Yeah.
would
Right,
be.
I always go with a script font. There are a couple.
Totally agree. It's a beautiful font for that. It's lovely.
It's funny because, you know, Carol, who runs the craft center and wanted me to teach this class, she's a calligrapher. So when I told her I was using, you know, an Adobe font, she kind of cringed.
Yeah. That's not. And so, is there a piece of software that allows you to make that radially around a
Yes.
circle? Okay.
Yep.
But-
The
but-
drawing software, which is there's going to be someone who's got expertise in that in the class with me, because I've done a few things, but the software makes it fairly easy, but there are tweaks to it that can be very frustrating if you haven't spent time with it.
Right.
You basically write on a curve. You just start typing and it fills the curved line you created.
Very nice.